Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Duplessis, and I'm the social media coordinator for TABI Tarot. I'm filling in for Janine this month. So we're going to get started in just a moment. This is TABI Tarot Live. I'm interviewing Jack Civitarese, who is a psychic who works in Salem, Massachusetts. She's also a friend of mine, so I'm going to bring her on in just a moment. Let me invite her. There she is. In just a moment. Just a moment. I think there we go.
Hey, darling, how are
Oh,
you?
yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
So far, so good. No technical difficulties.
Awesome. Love it.
And we're meeting in the daytime for us. This is unusual.
It is.
It's
It's
usually
very
dark.
bright right now. It's usually very colored and
Yes.
atmospheric, but
So I wanted to chat with you a little bit this month. I think you and I talked a little bit. Tabby does a monthly Instagram live, and we chat from a tarot perspective with people from all different psychic walks of life, so to speak, and different parts of the world because we're an international organization. And Jeanine asked me if I could take it this month, and I thought I'd really love to chat with you. So
hey.
um, now you I think I gave a little bit of background before I brought you on, but we
Mhm.
can just kind of dive right in. Your website describe yourself as an artist, a witch, a ritualist, and a psychic. And those are some really intriguing terms, especially given the fact that the part of the world where you work is, if no one is, there are people here who I know are familiar with Salem and the surrounding areas, and people who may not be. So if you could talk a little bit about those titles and what that means where you are.
Absolutely. They kind of all encompass creativity. They all kind of intuitive. They all kind of are branched into each other, so they do bleed into one another. So as an artist, I come from a family where art was a talent of theirs. My mother, her father, and so I was always grew up creating and drawing, and then later on my love for fabric um, bled into some of my psychic experiences. So those kind of match each other. And so my love for period costumes and clothes from another time period started from when I was about 5, 6, 7, 8. And I would take curtains and make almost Elizabethan or Edwardian type of
Yeah.
clothes
Because
that
your type
love.
of art is very tactile. You're not two-dimensional on a canvas. I mean, what you do,
I
what you
I was
create.
when I was younger, and I still have that ability. I never really lost that aspect to myself, but it became tactile as I started to remember making clothes, and I remembered how to hand sew, self-taught at a very young age. And so I ended up gravitating towards that because there was a really innate memory of that. So that's,
Hmm?
even my creativity got pulled into a connection from a psychic memory, from a past life memory, and got pulled
Wow.
back into sewing. But I do love drawing. And a lot of times, if anyone was to open up my books as shadows of any of my journals, you're going to
Hmm.
clearly see loads of hand drawn items. It's just, are they marketable? Would I advertise them? No, because I kind of got out of reach of that.
Right,
So,
right.
but yeah, all those layers of me do kind of mix together. And then same with the dramatic part of me, the part of me that's very flair and um, does love rich tapestry or layers of art or layers of creativity. That's the ritualistic part of me. I
Right.
do love rituals. I do love the pageantry of them. I love how they're expressive and then there's nuances. So I love all those types of things. So yeah. So I try to
So,
list it all.
well, and you do. I mean, it's amazing to watch you work, from afar, because you're so busy with everything. I know that you're very busy in that you're very involved in the Cabot tradition. You're an elder and high priestess in the Habit tradition and in the temple there. And you also you read tarot at your shop, and then you also read at another couple of places in Salem. Is that correct?
Yes, one other place. So I read at in my own
Hmm.
location and over the phone, Zoom, and then in person. But also too, I read at Pentagram in Salem currently. But where I first got my ability, like, to read it publicly was at Laurie Cabot's shop, the Cat, the Crow, and the Crown,
I
back in
remember
the
that when I
2000s.
visited them a
Yeah,
long time ago.
and that was a huge, deal for me to read publicly for the first time. Although I had ran, as a manager, I had ran psychic fairs for many years prior to that, and so I was all around psychics. I was the one that took the money and made the appointments and everything during October in Salem on the weekends. I with 12 psychics, so I've been around psychics all my life, tarot readers of all sorts, and always studied too. But
Mhm.
to read publicly really started when I was in my 20s, my mid
Right.
20s.
What prompted you to make the leap? Because it really is, it's like jumping off a cliff, isn't it? It's the fool card when you decide to do that.
Laurie made me. My Reverend High Priestess made me because I was already reading for friends and family. I was already reading large groups. I was already the one that at weddings. I'm very social, but also I'm very antisocial at the same time. If there's too many voices and too much loudness, I have a hard time. So I was always the one that would, like, even whole wedding parties or whole parties, I would take decks and just read a whole groups of people. It was easier for me to engage with people, but also do it one on one, and engage in a way that isn't about the weather, which I have a hard time with just chit chat too.
Right,
So I
right.
always want to get. The reverend in me always wants to get deep. Always wants to just really bond with somebody. So she knew that about me, and it was actually a charity event that we started, and she needed an extra reader. All her readers kind of bombed out because it wasn't a payday; it was kind of a charity day, and I did it.
Right.
And I was just like, you know what? There's no reason why I can't just do this. So
Yeah, just after it's easier after the way I say it's easier after the first time. Sometimes it's sometimes it's starting all over again. I want to back up just a little bit because we've
for
talked a
sure.
little bit about Lori, and I think there's plenty of people here who know from that I can see who are on who know you and who know about Lori. But from someone coming from somewhere else, they may not realize it. Salem is America's witch city, and it's witch city because of Lori Cabot, who is the official witch of Massachusetts, not just Salem, right? She's the official witch of Massachusetts. So you are an elder in the tradition. How long have you been with the Cabot tradition?
Um, at this point, I mean, 15 years, 16 years, something of the sort. Yeah, so
So,
not as long as one might think, because I've known the tradition. I was sewing on others' initiates, their patches.
right,
I was sewing on their initiation patches when I was, 19, 20, but I was not myself a Cabot witch
right.
until my late 20s. So when I joined the Cabot tradition, I was already established witch
Hmm.
and was already established psychic, and from there the relationship between she and I grew, and so did my love for her tradition.
Right, right. So you came to her kind of as a grown up witch already.
Yes.
We've what we've seen in just in the since the pandemic, I want to say, because Lori started reading like on Facebook, during the pandemic, and then started teaching for the first time online. So it literally the tradition has just exploded in the last 3 or 4 years because there are people, people have accessibility to her teachings now that they didn't before. And so, how is can you talk a little bit about that just because that's just so fascinating to me that you've gone from this everyone was in Salem pretty much or around Salem or made the trek to Salem for the rituals, and now there's just there's 300 or 400 people scattered all over the world, and how has the tradition adapted to that?
It is adapting slowly. So when you take witchcraft to one and two, sometimes that's a personal journey, and that really doesn't actually, you don't later connect to the whole group.
Right.
There's no, you're not there for that. You're there for your own inner journey. And that's what psychicism and witchcraft sometimes is all about. Sometimes those
Mm-hmm.
things really have to do with just a person's path. But then there is always a percentage in these larger groups that are incorporating with us, and we're still doing our rituals online. Um, and in person, but also making them available for online viewing. So we're still reaching out to people as much as we can. We have a newsletter that we produced with a lot of original written material as you know, being a
Right.
writer. And so we're still reaching out as much as we can. But at the end of the day, just like TABI, these larger groups, it's hard to get
Right.
to know everybody. And
Yes.
sometimes you see a come and go and an ebb and flow of people. And, we try to connect as much as we can and keep people stimulated and into, in learning, really not entertained, but learning. So we're kind of just still staying the same as if it's all in person in that. You win some, you lose some, and some are there for their own ride.
Well, and it's really been beautiful to watch because I mean, like a lot of people, like I read Lori's books, in the '90s, and
Mhm.
that was pretty much the extent of it. And all of a sudden, I had this accessibility, and also I took her tarot class, which I had never studied under anyone. I mean, I'm self-taught with tarot as well, but when you don't pass up the opportunity to study under a master when you get the chance.
That was
Um,
my last certificate that she made me take. She made me take her tarot class, even though I'd already been reading in her store and already been, self-taught for years as well. And then a lot of the tools of the, little inner secrets from the psychics that readers that I've known over the years. But that was the last certificate that she wanted me to earn. And I'm so glad that it wasn't just an earning of a certificate. The course was
yeah,
amazing, and I
yeah,
did glean a lot of practicality that I didn't apply before, and not because I didn't come across it. It's just, she's such a mother and, a store owner. And so she has these perspectives of like, people need to know this type of thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just a young person in my 30s that doesn't own a house, doesn't understand broken pipes or how cards can relate to this kind of mundane information,
that we need. I mean, that people need that. And I mean, that's, everybody asks the big questions, but, sometimes the little questions become big deals if you ignore them. So
Exactly.
it's super, super, super
So her
important.
take on that was really valuable for me, even as a studied reader.
Right. And her take is, completely, I mean, it's completely psychic based. So while there is the structure, it's like in the end, you throw all that out
Mm-hmm.
and you trust your psychic
Yes.
vision.
Yes.
So how do you I'm just thinking about Salem, and I mean, I've been there. I haven't been there in October. I've been there in September, and they said I remember to asking about coming for Halloween. They're like anytime from now on. And then of course there's Beltane and the other times of the year when there's things going on. So I can only imagine that Salem, that it's like living in a constant festival state, like it would be in other touristy towns, except for there's so many witches and psychics and different types of readers there. So the energy is very, very different. How do you like balance that and keep yourself centered and grounded with all that energy just swirling around? The current history and also the current energy, and then the historical aspect of Salem as well. I mean, there's a lot going on there under the
There is. And I
layers.
did end up, my husband and we ended up moving because it was hard to have that balance. We both worked in Salem. My religion's in Salem. My mother is my parents are just the next city over. I mean, not even a 5-minute drive away. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that was already there for me. And we moved a little bit further out up north in Gloucester, Mass, because of it was all too much.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're also talking about a 30-minute commute to Boston.
Right.
So it's essentially a major city at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of town, small town feel that I grew up with in Salem, and is gone, is long gone.
Right.
And so that's even witchcraft aside. So, so that's, and then on top of that, it's still a plethora. It's still a sort of a retreat, a pilgrimage for a lot of people that are on a psychic
Yes.
journey or on a spiritual path, and so it's more not all year round. It's very quiet right now, so it's pretty much April to November 1st. That
Right.
is, Beltane to Samhain. It's absolutely wild. There's a ton of people. There is no season. September is just as busy as October,
Right.
and so it's April's just as busy as June. So there's no end to it. And so how you stay grounded is for me at this point is to go there and just be focused, just to go there and just have it. Why am I there? What's the mission there? Do I walk around there now? Not in big groups. There's a lot of static in the air. There's a lot of heightened energy.
Right.
And so to living there, I lived in a lot of very haunted houses, a lot of houses that needed a lot of cleansings on the regular. And I don't miss that. I don't
Right.
miss that kind of a lot of people stirring up a lot of energy because it is vibrant. It's
Right.
electrical there. Um,
Right.
and that's
Kind
exciting
of.
for people who don't have that where they are from. But it's hard to ground when it's on 24/7.
Right. So how do you find like the clients that come to you? The same thing, because I mean, because you, like you just said, it's so heightened and it's so intense, and they must be on some sort of a high too when they go to unless they're from the area, but they're visiting, and all of a sudden, especially people who aren't used to how to take in that kind of energy and center themselves. So what do you do? How do you
Well,
handle people who
a
who
lot of
are all
shops that
over
I
the
worked
place?
at. So, I worked at several shops in the course of 25 years of being there. I started working in Salem when I was 17. And of all the shops I worked at, it's either you pump up the music and you own that energy, you make it a dance party and you make it
Right.
really lively, or you use music to actually tone things down and you use incense to really be like, slow down. This is a shop that is meant to be calmly explored. It's meant to be taking your time. And so it's really about controlling the masses with energy as soon as
Right.
they walk the door. And so we had, I worked at different places where it depends on what it is, but they do come in almost spastic. They do come in where they're just touching and they're just doing everything as fast as they can. And they don't know how to internalize the energy. So
Right.
yeah, so you do
Right.
have to kind of employ methods to tone it down a bit um, for customers. And there's always a lot of questions. Anyone that says, "Oh, I want to move to Salem and then I want to work at a witch shop," well, I hope you know something about magic or energy because one, can you handle it? And two, can you explain it to people? Because they really assuming everyone that works there knows a good deal.
Right.
So you have
Right.
really do have to be willing to answer a lot of questions off the cuff with patience, and educate and teach. And I think a lot of the shops that are survive the pandemic have that quality to them. You know,
Right.
you
Right. And
really
have
get
to.
a very educated and exciting experience when you go to Salem.
Yeah, it is. And of course, just talking to you, we talk about making a trip there all the time, and it's coming. It's definitely coming. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your reading style because you've been exposed to so many different methods, and so you're self-taught, and then with Lori, and then the different shops and the different people. Can you talk about your basic approach?
Yeah, so the first reading, so how I read a 15-minute reading is certainly not how I read like an hour reading, and that was the big hiccup for me when I started becoming reading public was I don't even know if I'm capable of reading in 15 minutes. And I learned that I am. And a lot of that, obviously, and a lot of that is about kind of I've always been able to. My mother taught me how to read auras when I was a teen, and how to see auras and just kind of interpretate them and interpretate the energy there. And that's usually the first thing I do is to talk someone into a little breathing state, a little meditative. Take a few deep breaths, feel yourself grounded and relaxed. And I'll repeat those type of things. Be yourself in the here and now, and then I want them to pay attention to their third eye and their heart chakra, and I will talk about kind of, seeing those energy points swirling and moving far out past your body, filling up this whole space. And I do that in a very calm, meditative voice. I don't want to put you all in a trance right now, so I'm not going to mimic it. But,
Oh,
but
come
it,
on.
yeah, I know, but it does mellow everyone out. And then at that point, it's almost where the cards are a side tool to what I'm really doing, which is psychic energy pulling on whatever their vibration is. So I already receive a lot of information in just those moments alone. Can they come down? Are they capable? Are there things coming to the third eye, my own third eye? And then the cards from that point start to give me a story. And I don't throw down anything like a proper cross or a proper spread. It's really at this point my hands just do whatever they want. So I pull cards, how they cross over, how many are in clusters. That's all. I let my hands do it, and then I interpretate whether they're up fully or sideways or at angles. Those all have different meanings to me. I do read reverse, and that's how I taught myself. Um, because I taught myself from a book, no cards in my hands, but my mother had the book, but my sister ruined her cards on her. so every book, the book I had reverse. So I just assumed that's what you had to do.
Right.
So that's how I learned it.
Right.
And I will just tell a story. So it's really, I'm not going from card to card. This means that, that means that. Unless
Right.
they're the particular scary cards like the devil and things like that, I will break down what that means, but more what it means and how they talk to each other.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that's usually the first spread I do is just kind of reading their aura, reading their energy, because I think that's important to really relate to them. Do they understand me? Am I connecting to them? And do they feel like I'm connecting to them? I think is the most established part.
Right.
You know, outside of that, once I know what we're communicating on an energetic level and verbally, from there, the cards can tell all kinds of stories.
And
But
do you combine oracle with tarot in a reading when you're reading for people, and how do you switch those gears?
yes, so I do in a half hour or an hour reading. That's what I would do at my own shop, not at Salem. That's just no time for that,
Right. Right.
unfortunately. Um, because there be my hands do it. So if I already have the deck out, like even if I have just two decks out that day, um, while they're telling their story or while they're talking, sometimes I'll pull two or three decks, cards from the original deck I shuffled. But sometimes I'll just start shuffling the Oracle deck and then pull one from there. So, there is a communication moment, and it really just it's organic. And then I'll say, this is the Oracle deck that I pulled. This is what this card means, and I think it has everything to do with what you're saying right now. So it's always when I'm pulling additional cards or an Oracle card, I don't need to explain much because they're communicating, and I'm getting one more insight off of that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and they might look, oh, this is a whole nother deck and this is a whole nother artist, but we're not there to kind of examine the tools I'm having. They're trusting,
Right.
that the information's coming through one way or the other. So,
Right. I think that comes into play if someone is particularly drawn to a card, which happens, and then you kind of focus on, oh, then you pay attention to why, they zeroed in on what they did.
absolutely.
Do you use other tools besides
A
cards?
pendulum almost every
Mm-hmm.
time. If it's again a half hour or an hour reading, a pendulum will come out, especially for yes and no, especially if they are doing a lot of talking
Mm-hmm.
and we're already at the end where now it's almost therapeutic, or they're like they get the message or they get validation of a message, and now they're kind of doing their brainstorming for the first time. I bust out the
Mm-hmm.
pendulum, and while they're talking, I don't ask yes or no questions. You'll see it swing while they're talking. And
Right.
just so the pendulum is agreeing with that statement, and or disagreeing. I don't let's think about that differently, or let's ask that differently,
Mm-hmm.
because this is all during the brainstorming time when they're like just been enlightened by something and they just had a revelation and now it's just purging out. Pendulums are perfect for that. Just let them talk and let the tool do its thing. So that's a major one.
That's Yeah, that's really really interesting. Just to just let and just to watch it because it's affirmation. A lot of and when people, especially during a reading, they'll start talking and they're saying the things that maybe repeating back what you've said, but what they need to hear and what they need to affirm. It's almost like speaking it aloud kind of helps it cement
A
in.
100%. And what are you going to do? Shuffle and get the same cards that you just read a moment ago
Right.
to validate what you just already knew? It's time
Right.
consuming. And to me, the pendulum will just do that quickly, And
Right.
so I do
Right.
love that tool. And the pendulum is the first tool I've ever used for divination. I thought I invented a pendulums. I thought they were my own invention as a 6-year-old. So I was highly upset that I didn't create that. So I love them. They're my go-to.
That's funny. So just talking about the pendulum for the validation and stuff. How do you feel about clarification cards? I mean, I have my own personal opinion, but I want to hear yours first before I share mine.
Well, what do you mean by clarifications. Clarify your
Well, like when you
clarification.
get, well, you clarify my clarifications. So you know you're doing the reading, and then things are, but people are, they're not quite sure what it means, or even for yourself. I mean, when it comes up, I mean, I might pull one additional card, but if I need more than that, it's kind of like I'm not paying attention to the message that's right in front of me.
Oh,
And so,
not me. Oh, I
oh,
love additional cards. I'll throw cards till the mood comes home. I mean, not me, because I'm an inquisitive mind,
mhm,
and so there will be moments. Now, my hand won't touch the deck again unless there's a real good point that they have, a real good validation, and I will
mhm,
want to say, "Well, this is it," because I'm psychic. I'm in it, and I'll be like, "You know what it is?" And I'm like, before I say it, and I will literally say it at the same time while throwing another card. I mean, I'll be like, that I feel like you guys were, connected before in another life. I want to say something like that, but that's bold. And I'll be
yeah,
pulling the
yeah,
card. I'll be like, I'm saying it because this is what they're paying me for. It'll be the lovers, or
right.
um, and
It
so
doesn't come from nowhere, right?
yes, and so I will do that, but mainly I do it for when the point has not been hit, because otherwise I'll just repeat myself because or repeat myself in a way that's like maybe they're not understanding the way what I just said, or I talk very fast, as you can even hear me now, so sometimes I'll repeat something that I said 15 minutes ago, which seems like ages ago at this point, so but there'll be times where if my hand is going for a card and it's for validation, then I'm doing it. I'm not holding back.
Right,
So
right.
because I want them to have the most experience and out of it. And I think some cards I communicate with each other. So even though there's a story there on the board, there's a story already laid on the table. One more card might take that story and elevate it a little higher.
I know that in addition to the readings at your shop in Gloucester, you hold Esbat rituals, other types of rituals. You also do some teaching. Can you talk a little bit about what are other things, the other ways that you're involved psychically with people?
Yeah. So right before 2020, I had a real strong inkling of change. And it wasn't just for me. I really just kind of was like, you know what, things are changing. I just know they are. And I pay attention to astrology and such too. And I found that I was like, in February of 2019, I was just like, I'm going to start teaching. I hadn't done this in a long time. Um, when I did teach in Salem at Laurie Cabot Shop, I was still just a second degree priestess. I
Mhm.
was not reverend yet, and so I wanted to come back to that part of my life. So I started to teach and kind of goddess workshops, goddess energy, um, scrying, things of that nature. And obviously everyone with 2020 went to Zoom, and it just
Right.
ended up. Thankfully, I was already kind of established as someone who was teaching, and I went with it very quickly. I
The
learned
magic
that.
of those little square boxes.
Yeah, and I was just like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And I love when I teach a workshop or an event, I don't know, a lecture. I love to have it only a lecture for a small amount of time, and I like to make sure that I'm engaging or we're doing something together, a ritual, a meditation. Um, and then when I got this space, not even 2 years ago, I was thrilled. Now I can actually do moon circles and SBATs and have them have an in-person guest. I can still teach. So I love to engage in people. How I know what I know, how I'm multifaceted in a lot of ways is from communicating with other people. It is not all book smart. A lot of it is hands-on talking, breaking down things, storytelling, and you see that with TABI and their groups and other groups of tarot talk. Like it just exploring with other people absolutely is beneficial for everyone.
Somebody will say something, you're like, why didn't I see that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or oh my gosh, me too. Or when did that happen? Because I was in the same bubble. How did I not know you? And this just goes on and on. These connections are very thrilling, and so I couldn't wait to have them back, but also didn't want to lose the people that are a kind of a non-coven that I gained from 2020 and 2021. So I really I enjoy teaching. I enjoy opening up the room for open discussion that usually is a part of all my events. Um, and so I'm happy to get back into that. I did take a little bit of a hiatus last year because I taught for the Cabot Kent Hermetic Temple. I taught Witchcraft 3, so their Reverend program, which is a year and a day. And
Right.
that took a lot. So I'm going to get back into things this particular year. But
That's exciting. Yeah, I
yeah,
can't wait to hear what.
yeah, probably a lot of the same old, a lot of the same type of classes. Again, spiritualism, goddess worship, the Sabbats, the Wheel of the Year for witches, and then, the Aspats, the moon circles. Those are my go-tos. Those are my strong suits.
One of the things that fascinates me that I hadn't that I learned from you is your take on scrying. I mean, when people think about scrying, they think about a black mirror, a bowl of water, a crystal ball, but you use all kinds of things in your in other. I'm just gonna let you talk about that.
Yeah, so scrying is gazing, and it's kind of not looking at what you're looking at and
Mhm.
allowing to receive information. So I was never under any assumption that there was a limitation of tools for that. I was so my mother, I scry from fabric in curtains and wallpaper, and my mother would always, I would lose myself. But I would be able to talk. My mother would be like, "Hey, where's the hairbrush?" And I'd be like, staring. It's staring. Jack, where's the hairbrush? And it's like, it's in this area, blah blah blah. My mother would be like, "Oh, it is here." But my fixed gaze was somewhere else.
So are you like in two
I
places at once? Are you
am.
here and there?
I'm wherever I'm seeing, whatever movie I'm seeing, I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing the curtain or the fabric. And I'm also hearing, but I'm walking around my house too. And so I'm also walking to where the hairbrush is. So scrying to me is very fascinating. It's remote viewing. It's all encompassing for me. So
Yeah, it's really multi-level. I mean,
it
because for
is.
so many people, it's you are focused on whatever it is that's there, and that's really fascinating because it almost makes sense what you do because it kind of opens up your subconscious and lets your subconscious work on it rather than staring so hard at something, looking to see
Yeah,
something.
I'm not
Yeah,
looking at anything. My eyes are far valuable for they're looking at a stitch taking a black on black. They're not looking to see, this Wizard of Oz, and I'm not trying to see anything in, Dorothy and the Poppies here. No,
right.
I'm not trying to
The
see.
mist in the crystal ball, man. And I love my crystal balls, but I've never seen anything.
Yeah,
It's always been. I used to, I mean, in Texas, it's very common. We all have we have ceiling fans, and laying on the bed watching the fan turn, kind of the same
yeah.
thing because it's that mesmerizing. And
It
where do
is
you
something
go?
that you can get trapped in, but also that suddenly the screen in your mind. And I do this while walking. I mean, I've done this all the time. It's self hypnotism, essentially. If I go for a walk, people are beeping and waving at me like, "Do you want to ride?" And I'm like, I don't hear, I don't see, but yet I'm able to cross the street.
Right,
Yet I'm able to push the
and not
button and
so far. So
crosswalk. But I can't hear or see you. But I'm also practicing safety in my mind. I'm sewing. I'm writing a poem. I'm doing it, speaking prolifically to the goddess, throwing a spell out there. I'm fighting somebody, oftentimes I'll have an argument with somebody and I'll go for a walk and they give me like a big punch with their own words in my mind. I'm like, ooh, touche. I better not. And in real life, I wake up and I'm like, whoa, I'm here already. And I'm not going to have that argument with that person because they actually have some points. So
right,
they have some
and so
data
you've resolved it by the time you're done. That's
by the
brilliant.
time I'm done. So there's loads of things happening, even in motion. So I just always had that kind of brain. So scrying to me, um, it's just allowing that space for me to see outside either the screen of my mind or remote viewing, really be somewhere else.
Right,
Um,
right,
and I love teaching it because I think it's a very valuable tool. And I think those who do it naturally just need to know that that's what they're doing. And
right.
those who never done it before, give it a whirl. Um, but I
And I
think,
guess you can incorporate that with tarot too. I mean, if you put yourself in the right mindset,
yeah,
you can. Yeah, scry using the cards. I mean, I think it would be different than reading. Am I right?
A little bit, but I scry all the time. If I'm in a moment where I'm seeing a vision in my mind's eye to their story, and I'm like, well, I can see you doing X, Y, and Z, I will, like, even now talking to you, I'm looking at a piece of fabric. Like, I will go to whatever is around me and just like give me a moment to see this better. And I'm like, well, this is what you're doing. So I'm no longer looking at them. I'm making eye contact. I'm looking at whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm seeing in my mind's eye by looking at some other object,
Right.
usually a pattern,
Yeah.
or the corner of a room where it almost like that reverse pyramid, where the ceiling
Hmm.
and the two walls hit. That does it for me. That's
Lots of
trying.
stuff. Lots of stuff hangs out in the corner of the
Yeah,
room.
well,
I'm looking up at
you
my
know,
corner. Something up there all the time.
yeah. So those little areas
Yeah.
will do that for me, and then I will be able to tell them exactly what I'm seeing, and then look back at them, and then they're just like their eyes are open, or like they're nodding, or they're shocked, or So I'm not. I hardly ever make eye contact with people I'm reading. I'm really, I don't want to get their human cues. I want to scry. I
Right. Right.
want to be psychic. You know.
Yeah. So you just said again about the fabric and that. So I mean, I mean, my first encounter with you was as the Stitch Witch, because
Yeah.
that's what you did before I knew about all this other stuff. I am wearing, I don't know if people can see it, I'm wearing this gorgeous cloak that you made, capelet, my put it my now, it is 80 degrees here today, but I am wearing it anyway.
You're wearing velvet.
I'm wearing velvet and satin. Anyway, it's just because your creations are, and I just want to tell the story when I ordered this from you and you sent it to me. I had at the time I live in a condo and our mailroom was not secure. It was in a little guard shack with no guard. And people, it was right on the street, and people had been breaking in and stealing the mail. And this was too big to get left in the box.
Yeah.
And I did. You had the tracking, so I knew it was there, but stuff was disappearing, and it was left on the counter in there. And I think it was overnight. I think we didn't get it or something. And when I got the next day and it was there, and I opened it up, and you had wrapped and put a spell in that box. I still have the scroll. I'm looking at it right now because it's still protecting my. I thought that's why that thing wasn't going anywhere.
No.
So everything that you weave, I mean, from your readings to your spell bottles to your fabric creations, I mean, it is just everything is entwined in your life, and that's so magical to me.
Yeah, I just really live the life. I'm just really that person and always have been. And I just don't know how else to be, at the end of the day. Um, I just feel like magic is everywhere. It's natural. It's part of nature. So, and I'm my
I,
natural self.
I'm just going to take a look through the comments because I think some people said something, and I just want to read them to you because I think they said some nice things. If we
Oh,
get through, oh, we've had Debbie, and Kimberly was there. Debbie said hello. Hi, Helen is Occult Projects, and Rania was there. She said hello. Uh, Claire, Claire said Breeze there, of course. Jack is an amazing magical person. Yes, she
oh,
is. Divine Moon Goddess said that you are looking beautiful, Jackie.
oh, thank you very much.
Claire is a part of TABI, and I've met her on several of the TABI Zooms. She said she already feels relaxed listening to you speak. Jack has that. That is one of her beautiful qualities. Massage diva, loved it. Had to go back to work, and I think that's it. So we've had a few people come on. I just wanted to give you an idea of what the nice things people were saying, which is
Oh,
always nice
thank
to
you,
hear.
everyone. I appreciate
But
that.
so if someone were to think about visiting Salem, and I'm it just is there what's the best time to go? I
So,
mean, if
yeah, we used to tell everyone September, and now September is just as busy. And it almost feels like we kind of created this beast where it's so first off Salem, what we call Halloween, is a month-long event.
right,
So when we say, oh, I got Halloween, and everyone's thinking, yeah, but it's October 12th. No, it's the whole month. So that's one thing to kind of think of when we're saying, it's the stores. September's gorgeous. It could be 80 degrees. It could be, a nice 65. There could be loads of leaves. It could be nothing at all. It could be
right,
anything. It could be pouring rain the whole time. either way, the stores are packed with items. They're going to have their best of their best. You know, also, no one's going to be surly because we are New Englanders. We can be a little
Mhm.
rough around the edges, especially a little punchy by the end of the October season. So we're less punchy in September. Um, but also August is a beautiful time. You're going to still see a lot of very nice things if you're looking to shop. But it could be very hot. It could be so the best time to come is really depending on what it is that you're after. Do you just want to walk around Salem and have that experience? Well, then April, April, May is just as lovely. But
Because
if
I think what is true is people don't. I mean, Salem is Witch City, but it's also a beautiful seaside harbor town. I mean, that is yeah,
immensely, it's extremely historic, as all of New England is. But we have a beautiful water front and in
mhm.
Salem Harbor, so it's really just this quiet waterfront. So even though it's ocean, it's definitely a harbor in that way.
Very peaceful
Uh,
there. It's very
yeah,
peaceful
so
there.
we
Yeah,
have a few restored historic ships. So we have the Friendship, and so it's just this beautiful area for that type of look and feel. The historic seafront and maritime events in themselves that are rich in history and outside of the 1692 witchcraft trials. So we have
right. Which is predominant. I mean, on the square there, and I mean, you can see a lot of that history and
it
Nathaniel
is
Hawthorne's House of the Seven Gables,
absolutely,
and then there's even the statue of Samantha Stevens from Bewitched,
yeah,
contemporary history.
yeah. Well, at this point, I mean, we're aging ourselves. Is it how can it will
How
be
contemporary is that, right?
okay. Um, and that's centralized to a very busy part of town. Um, so there's loads to see right there, but ultimately the city is small. So if you
Right,
want to spend like a whole 4 or 5 days there, you might get bored.
right,
And so we often try to tell people that, like, you might want to go to Boston for the day or plan, because the city of Salem really is just, two downtown areas with a little bit in the middle. It's
right,
very walkable. If you're able to walk, and if you're not able to walk, it can be a little bit difficult because there's a lot of cobbleway, there's a lot of stone.
right. A lot of
There's
stairs. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
there's
It's
a lot of
old. Yeah, it's
old buildings that don't have great access in and out. They try, but still. But if you can walk, then you might find that it's like by day three, you're like, we've done it all.
right.
Um, so it's something where it's like, well, Boston's right down the street, or Gloucester,
Or other are
or
there any? Yeah, Gloucester. Ask you about the other little towns. I mean,
huge
those are all
train
worthy of a
system
visit too. Mhm.
goes right through, and our trains are pretty reliable, and run regularly. So absolutely, you can pop over and do something different for the day without a doubt. So, but it is small though. To experience all of Salem can be done in a whole day.
Right. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, what I did, I was actually at a conference in Peabody and took a cab to Salem. I think 3 times. After the conference in the
Yeah,
evening, and that was great just to see it like that. And then, of course, the rest of the time I spent in Boston. But the whole area. I mean, because Boston is fantastic, as
yeah.
well. I mean, just to get the. Yeah, it's not like Texas, that's for sure. Now, the people from England who are watching, it's probably way more like England, but it has its own flair and its own. It really is one of those places where you go to that. It's I always talk about the vortex, like in Sedona or New Orleans is one, and Salem is another. And part of that I think is because of Lori Cabot and building the Crystal Wheel above Salem, where the Cabots all visit every Thursday to do their healing work. And I think I can post something in the comments and stuff if anybody's interested in learning more about that and the work that is done, that has been going on now for what, almost 50 years, I guess.
Yes.
It was in
Yeah.
the yeah
Exactly. Since
that
1965,
yeah
we do psychic meditations and lead people in a guided meditation to have their own experience. But psychically, this crystal wheel encompasses all. It's ethereal, and encompasses all of Salem, 700 feet above it. And energetically, it's a place of solace and healing, and a place where we can see and greet all kinds of different energies and loved ones and friends. And there's that, that's definitely a vortex in itself. But also, too, there's hundreds and thousands of people that have been doing witchcraft, practicing witchcraft, whether they know how to or not.
Who have lent
in
their energy there. Yes,
And then
yes.
we also we have a very, you know, a long history with even Native Americans that lived in those parts. These are fishing grounds. There's a lot of animals there. There's a lot of fey element. There's a lot of, underground water. There's a lot of different rock formations there. So it has a lot of nature in there that also kind of has its own vibration. Even if that's long gone now, you could tell that the earth still in that area still was very rich with its own personality.
Yeah, still remembers, I think. Yeah, even
Yes.
if it's not really, it's faded but blended in
Mhm.
with the other energy there. That, and I mean, I love the maritime history, of all of that. That too. That's just fascinating to me. But I will also, post something. The Crystal Wheel happens every Thursday. The Cabot Kent Hermetic Temple is broadcasting it live every few weeks. So I think this week. This week's a live one, I think.
Yes,
Um,
and I have a live one coming up. I believe it's early March that I'll be doing one. It's not.
And these are open. Anyone is welcome to join these. They are broadcast at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're in the UK, but you can watch it afterwards too. They're
Oh
put
yeah.
on the Cabot Kent Hermetic Temple Facebook page, and I can post that information in the comments when we're done. And this is all posted, because if you haven't experienced that, it's beautiful, and it's a guided meditation, and it's specifically for healing purposes.
Yes,
So
and it's available to everybody. We changed the
mhm.
color for the week, and that color has a certain energy attached to it. But it is, certainly any type of healing needed. You don't have to follow what the needs are of the color.
Right.
But it's there for peace and solace is the main thing.
Hey, so I think we've covered everything I had written down and that you and I talked about ahead of time, because we did talk about stuff ahead of time, so we wouldn't be up here going blah blah blah. So, is your shop open to the public, or are you by appointment only? Just asking for people who
When
might want to make a visit.
I'm such a free spirit. When my sign is turned, it is like right stop, but
But you are open when, I mean, people can walk in and see what you have, and also you have your
absolutely.
online presence, which you put your website on the flyer for this, and we'll post it. And again, I'll post the flyer again that has everything. Just because you are definitely a multifaceted person, witch,
Yeah,
psychic, and
even when I read cards for the public, I do it by appointment only because even if I had a walk in, if I had already my mind set on a sewing day, that's a different part of the brain,
right,
and so I always like to kind of know what I'm going into that day. As much as I am psychically very quickly and can pick up a lot of things, I also, to go into that realm makes it hard to all of a sudden now be, you know, doing practical things.
right,
I
right,
can't just switch those hats very easily. My brain does not allow that. So always by appointment for reading in the shop here.
right.
Um, yeah.
Or if you're at Pentagram, then you've got set hours then at Pentagram when you're reading there. Is that
Oh,
correct? Or is that appointment
yeah.
only at
No,
Pentagram?
it's set there, and then you can book the appointment right there with any reader there. And all of Salem kind of has that, walk-in availabilities with some readers or pre-book.
Right,
So yeah.
right. And Bree she posted the psychic, the crystal wheel link.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
if anybody's interested, make note of that, because it's amazing. I love when we do them live. I mean, I will kind of pay attention when they're not live, but I always make a live session.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to be able to be talked out into that meditative state,
Yes, yes,
kind of a piece.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you for agreeing to join me this week, and getting me through. This is my first TABI Instagram live, so hopefully it won't be my last. But I'm glad it was with you, because you're a friend and you made me feel comfortable. And I always enjoy. Jack and I do our own lunar muse sessions we're free spirits, so they'll pop up, and but we throw cards and we talk about the astrological weather and whatever else is on our minds. But we try to do one about once a month, give or
Yeah.
take. So
We just had our year
we
anniversary, and
did,
yep, and
and hope, yeah,
I love it. I love the sporadic of it, and even though sometimes it's overlapping and with the same topics, but at the end of the day, we are kind of just go off the cuff, and I
yep,
think it's great. I think people,
me too.
cards through that. So
Oh, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Rania. Thanks, Deb and Bonnie. Nice to see some familiar names. Pam, Lanitas, I think that's Pam. Thank you, Pam. Um, anyway, I think we'll call it from here. I talk to you soon.
thank you so
Thanks,
much,
everybody.
Mary. I really appreciate this. Thank you, Tabby, for the opportunity, and I will talk to you. Be well. Mwah.
Been great. Bye bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye.